Ave Maria, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant, its supernatural aspects, the metaphysics of gold, as well as places of power, which are scattered all over the earth. It's said that 100% of our sacred sites are found upon places of power. Who knows? You might even be sitting in one right now. Stay tuned here at Pipples of the Lord, Spiritual Warfare Channel. First, let's say a prayer for our priests. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, for the holy priests of the Catholic Church. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus nunc, et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In nomine Patri, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Everyone knows about the Ark of the Covenant. So, I'm not going to go into the whole history of the Ark. What I'm going to do today is speak on the supernatural aspects of it and how, as an ex-occultist, I have a unique understanding of the metaphysical aspects of gold, the mythology, the anthology, how it was used within the occult of olden times and ancient times. It comes all the way down to us, the reasons, ways, and means from Egypt and other ancient cultures. I'm also going to be speaking on places of power. So let's begin. The Ark was viewed in 1988 by the remote viewers of the Central Intelligence Agency. It's been in the news lately. I'm sure many of you have caught wind of it. But when you read the CIA document, it reads, and this is when the remote viewer views what the target is, they don't know what the target is. It's in a sealed envelope in another location, and they're told to just go by the coordinates. So it reads, viewer 032, date 5th of December 1988. Target is a container. This container has another container inside of it. As we all know, the 10 Commandments on the tablets were to be kept in the Ark. The target is fashioned of wood, gold, and silver. The target is similar in shape to a coffin and is decorated with seraphim, angels, the two angels that you see. This target is located somewhere in the Middle East, as the language spoken by individuals present seemed to be Arabic. Visuals of surrounding buildings indicated the presence of mosque domes. Individuals in the area were clothed in virtually all white, had black hair and dark eyes. One figure I honed in on wore a mustache. And remember, when people are remote viewing, what are they doing? They're sending their consciousness out, and they go there. So, of course, they're going to see what's happening in that moment. People, the smells. Is it hot or cold? What's going on around them? Not all of them are as skilled as others, but let's continue on. The target is hidden underground, dark and wet, were all aspects of the location of the target. Many people are speculating that this is a chamber under the dome of the rock. Hold that thought. The purpose of the target is to bring a people together. It has something to do with ceremony, memory, homage, the resurrection. There is an aspect of spirituality, information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we know now. What's interesting is this remote viewer gets the feeling it has something to do with the resurrection. Here's the really interesting part. When I was researching, probably a year and a half ago, I came across, I wish I could remember where it was, but I came across some literature that spoke of how the Israelites, before Christ was born, they would make their camp in the pattern of a cross. Now, a lot of scholars debate this, but what I read seemed very practical and logical. And then the Holy of Holies, where the ark would have been kept, was in the very heart of the camp, laid out in the pattern of a cross, like the crucifix. There was also verbiage which described Hebrew letters, Hebrew words, that when they were spoken, because they were in the symbolism of the Aleph Bayit, when they would sprinkle the blood onto the ark or the mercy seat of the ark or the footstool of the ark, they would say the words, the nail, the hand. For some reason, the way the words came out, it translated to nail and hand. And they made their camp in the shape of a cross. So the resurrection, actually the first word in Hebrew in the Bible is Bereshit. And Bereshit, when you break down the Aleph Bayit, I'll have to do a podcast on this. Each letter tells the story symbolically of the coming of Christ, which would be 2,000 years, something later. So there's all these little threads that connect together to create this grand tapestry. That's God. That's how God works. I wish I was more precise and more scholarly for you, but you guys can go and look this stuff up if you really want to. So back to the letter, and the most interesting part of the letter is the last paragraph. The target is protected by entities. I'll read that again. The target, the ark, is protected by entities and can only be opened by those who are authorized to do so. This container cannot be opened until the time is deemed correct. Once it is time to open the container, the mechanics of the lock system will be found to be fairly simple. Individuals opening the container by prying or striking are destroyed by the container's protectors through the use of a power unknown to us. Entities, angels, protecting the container. And if anybody tries to open it and it's not the right time or the right person, they are destroyed by the container's protectors, the ark's protectors, by a power unknown, which is God's power. So I find this all pretty incredible. Now, stuff on the internet, you just never know, right? Is that letter authentic? Allegedly it is. It was reported, just this week by quite a few places. Even if it's not, the story of the ark will go through the mysteries here on what I was taught decades ago, before the internet, within the mystery schools, about the power of gold. So the ark has a power to it. What we know about gold is, the ark had specific instructions of how it was made. The exact dimensions, the exact kind of materials, the exact sigil presentation on it, meaning the two angels, all of these things within the occult, the symbolism, the sigils, the words, how sigils translate into words or meanings. All of this was on the Ark, and the specific dimensions, the geomancy of it, the way everything was constructed. When used in a ritual, these things all carry a frequency, an energetic fingerprint, a meaning. As I've spoken of in many of my podcasts, when someone is constructing a rite, which is many rituals that make up a rite, everything is very specific. You're bringing in so many things which will bring power, meaning, precision. You're using the forces. Now, when we look at our ancient cathedrals, our oldest estates, the ziggurats, the pyramids, the ancient temples and monuments, even the way Stonehenge is created and constructed, everything is always done very precisely in order to harness the forces. And you'll even see the sigils, the petroglyphs, the petroforms in stone. You'll see the serpent imagery. Everything has meaning. So when we observe the Ark, this is God's power. Now, everything in the occult is for power and control, to reject God, to become your own God. That is evil. But everything is based on the same methodologies, the same principles, the same forces are utilized, except with God, when God wills something, it is epically by degrees 10 times more powerful. It can be eternal when he creates something if he wills it. So I don't want to give you the impression that I'm glorifying Magica. I am not, but I am explaining that both sides use the same premise. Lucifer can't create anything, so he always rips off God's stuff and uses it because it's how the cosmos has been wired. And he utilizes all these things. The specific dimensions of the Ark and having it in gold with perhaps silver is important. So the Ark with its two seraphim and the gold and silver on it. Gold is conductive. In the occult, everyone knows that gold is conductive. And so all of your pentacles, all of your swords, your athames, all of your wands, cups, tables are made of gold to perform the ritual and rite on. Everything is made of gold. When you look at the paranormal community, they will also tell you that there is something called the electromagnetic spectrum. And I've talked about this quite often. This is electricity plus magnetism in higher than average amounts. Gold will increase those amounts. In the old times, everyone knew when you performed magica, you had to do it in a place with higher than average electromagnetic frequencies. You could create it by using conductive metals and granite stone, or you could go into a geographical location known as a power spot, which is naturally created by the earth, the way it's formed. And what is it? A power spot is always on a magnetic anomaly. There's the magnetic aspect of the electromagnetic spectrum. But it also has currents running through it that some of you know as ley lines. We call them telluric currents, which is a scientific term for the electricity that runs just under the surface of the earth. There are crossing points and nodes, and I've talked about this in many podcasts. The St. Michael line, the Sword of St. Michael line, all of our ancient temples, ziggurats, pyramids, all sacred sites, oldest cathedrals, 100% of them are built upon these places. Because of this, because of their location on the earth within a place of power. Now, you'll also find within Magica, everything is gold, like I said, but you'll see a lot of gold when there are rites and rituals being performed in all cultures. For example, in Egypt, they would use, let me just pull this up here. They would have headdresses of gold, shoes of gold, fingertips of gold. Everything was gold. We all know Egypt is famous for gold. The lining of their temples was always in gold. Gold is conductive. So why is gold so important specifically, and why does it become conductive at certain times? So at 3 a.m., wherever you are on planet Earth, the magnetosphere will rush over the land just before sunrise. It will electrify anything that is conductive. So if you have a whole house of gold and you're covered in gold, that electric conductive action will raise the electromagnetic frequency. And if you're on a magnetic anomaly as well within the land, then you have the higher than average EMFs. In my day, before the internet, we were taught in a very exclusive mystery school that Magica is but a whisper of what it once was, because no one performs Magica in the correct way, in the correct places, the correct locations. You also see with the Nazi regimes that they were searching for these locations, as well as searching for holy relics and objects, i.e. the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, if someone touched it, it was so conductive and filled with electricity, evidently, and God's power, that you would just drop dead. You would have a heart attack and drop dead. It also took down the walls of Jericho. It is something that, to someone like me, is very, very normal or very plausible that that could happen. But Egyptians went a step further. Now, all of the lineage, the knowledge flow, the downstream in mystery schools comes from Egypt. What the Egyptians did was they created something called monatomic gold, mfktz. It's MFKTZ because we don't know the vowels, mfktz. They were small pyramid-shaped cakes, as you can see in this gentleman's hand, and they were consumed. So they were consuming white powdered gold, mfktz. Today, there is a whisper of it in communities that are through solvent coagula, the operations of that, creating ormus. Ormus is said to bilocate. I've made it. I've seen it bilocate, meaning it will be in the bottle and then it'll be outside of the bottle, but you don't touch it because next day it'll be inside of the bottle again. Yes, I've seen that. It is that strange. It is created through ritual chemistry, which is alchemy, and the process is called solvent coagula. It is 7 operations contained within it. Ritual chemistry is chemistry plus consciousness. So when you're creating something, you're doing the chemistry according to the process, but you're also using your consciousness to change the outcome or increase the outcome. So the Egyptians used monoatomic gold. So they themselves, with their gold fingertips and sandals, and you even see with the Israelite priests, the gold lamen with the stones that represented the 12 tribes. So why were people wanting to become electromagnetic? themselves. Why were they consuming mufkuts? Well, when you consume monoatomic gold, many people report that they become more prophetic, more visionary, more powerful when they're working magicka. But of course, we have to remember always the agency of demons, of fallen angels, i.e. gods and goddesses. These were not people that were working with God the Father, even though they were using all of his materials, his forces, his methods, his principles. Again, the devil can't create anything, but he does hijack all the time. When they were in these locations, and I said they are all located on a magnetic anomaly to be that half of the equation, that's not entirely true. The pyramids themselves may not have been built upon a magnetic anomaly. They may be one of the earliest, most ancient forms of something that was so profound and epic, it actually created the magnetic part of the magnetic anomaly. And this could be true in other locations as well. But places of power are found all over the earth. The Hopi called them spots of the fawn, like the spots on the back of a fawn, scattered across the whole earth. In fact, you might be sitting in one right now and not even know it. But where we're talking about the Ark and the Dome of the Rock, we see here the Dome of the Rock located at the base of Mount Moriah. So it's still part of the mount. Now, I don't know if that mount was thousands and millions of years ago, a volcano that created a magnetic anomaly. I've never been there. I've never taken tri-field measurements. And I'm not talking about tri-field meters that Ghostbusters use. I'm talking about the kind made at Princeton, which I possess, to check the electromagnetic frequencies. But as you can see, this is the Dome of the Rock. It's inside of the mosque, of course, that was built on top of it. Underneath, there are caverns. And what we know about this particular kind of rock, it's not granite, which is normally what you'll find in a place of power. This is limestone, and also the pyramids are limestone. But limestone is unique because it's kind of spongy. I don't mean you can sponge it together. I mean, it has those cellular chambers within the structure of the rock that can hold water, and water is conductive. So every morning at 3 a.m., wherever you are in the earth, and the magnetosphere, just before sunrise, and the magnetosphere passes over the earth, it will conduct anything that will electrify. Water will electrify. As we know, you don't want to drop your radio in the bathtub or you get electrified. So this will hold water. And so underneath here is a cavern. You see the hole. There's a hole there. Underneath was called the Well of Souls or something like that. But underneath was once perhaps a well of water. And they're saying now that there's starting to be trickles of water that they're seeing to prove that. You also see a small rectangular indentation on this that is clearly petriformed, man-made, where they say the Ark used to rest. Now, this place is so powerful because these things are often reported. Not this spectacular, but years ago, everyone was filming and reporting. It's called a hoax on the internet, but I suspect it's not a hoax because in places of power, this kind of thing happens all the time. I live in a place of power, and I have seen huge car-sized stars that are a light that I can't even describe. They are angelic in nature. They are all the fractal colors of a diamond in the sun. Well, this one particular giant car-sized orb or thing of light, being of light, came down upon that dome, which is over that foundation stone, where underneath, allegedly, the Ark is still stored and is present. It came down, and this is a depiction of it with progressive photography. It came down and then was there and then shot straight up into the sky, like reports of UAPs and UFOs are. But as you know, if you know me, UFOs and UAPs are all fallen angel activity or angelic activity or what have you. It's, they say it's interdimensional now, and they can't explain it. It's a unidentified aerial phenomena as opposed to a flying object. So they're admitting that that's interdimensional and that's the realm of angels. So that's a whole nother podcast. Again. So back to the Ark and its supernatural aspects. We always have to remember that the greatest, and don't take this the wrong way, the greatest magician ever was God the Father himself. That is all his stuff. It was stolen by the fallen angels that came down on Mount Hermon, that we know exactly when Magica came to us, Genesis 3. When they came down on Mount Hermon and went into the daughters of men, they made the deal with the women to bear their children, and they gave them magica. They gave them power and control, and we all know where that went. That went awry. So I think that when we see something made of gold with the stories that the Ark has around it, think of what I just shared with you within the occult, and then take that to God's level of work. This thing is so valuable, so priceless, so powerful. It's touched by God. And for someone to find it, I hope it's hidden in a very good place, a very difficult place to get to. They're saying it's under the Dome of the Rock, and if it is, with LiDAR and satellite imaging, penetrating imagery, I don't think it's going to be long now. But it's definitely, in my humble opinion, not in Ethiopia. And then on a side, we have to remember that the Ark's presence was associated with divine power and caused the Jordan River to recede. So it makes sense to me. It all sounds legitimate. It was also associated with being inside of Solomon's temple, and we all know about that. So all the stuff that happened with Solomon's temple and Solomon himself, it makes a lot of sense. It is just, the anthology of it is so supernatural and incredible. Again, it's associated or creates, like I was talking about the pyramids, creating a place of power. The Ark itself may be that level of power because it's God's, where it creates a place of high electromagnetic frequencies. And that's why you see all the hoopla going on wherever it goes. It's creating that high level of power, harnessing the forces itself through God's power. So a traveling electromagnetic place of power would also allow people to become visionary. It was kept in the Holy of Holies, and only certain purified priests could approach it. I find it incredible. Also, in the Jewish tradition, the Dome of the Rock is considered a place where God created the world, where where God took that first handful of earth to make Adam. Place of power. That's where it all happens. That's where everything happens. And it's so funny on a tiny scale. The paranormal community knows this truth as well. They go around with their little EMF meters. Even the little ones will pick up the higher than average electromagnetic frequencies. And all of our sacred sites are built upon these places. A lot of times there's something called a continuity discontinuity line where it drops off significantly, the telluric currents and the magnetic anomaly. And we see that with the serpent in Ohio, the serpent that's on the land, and it's geoformed into the land itself, and it's got the egg in its mouth. That is located on possibly where a meteorite struck, and it has a really sharp continuity discontinuity edge to it. And a lot of things happen there too. In the Hopewell and Adena sites, we see all the mound building, which is harnessing the forces and geomancing and petriforming the land. There are so many ceremonial landscapes. Of course, farmers have plowed over them and they're disappearing. But the ones that have been preserved have been found to have giant skeletons, a lot of gold, a lot of copper, a lot of silver, and there's a lot of granite involved. So, it all ties together. We always have to remember it's God's stuff, but the devil will hijack it. The fallen angels will instruct mankind how to do things with it and what it is. We were never supposed to have that until God willed it, and it would be time. But back then, it was all about power and control, and it stirred people up. There was so much warfare, so much conquering. Everybody was fighting. So I think that's about all I can share with you on the power of gold, which is scientific as well as metaphysical, and the background very superficially on places of power. I've done other videos that are more in depth on it. But we cannot explain. We can measure places of power with the instruments, very precise, like I was discussing my trifield from Princeton that was made especially for me. We can measure all of these telluric currents and magnetic anomalies, but none of us can explain what happens within these places. I was in a place of power for 8 years. I have a million stories that would just make your hair stand on end. It would give you goosebumps. The things that happened to me, now I was primed because of my training of 4 decades, but it happens to everybody. They walk in and they don't know why they're so visionary. Again, these places put your brain into an altered state, only it's very unique. It's clear. You're walking around, you're talking to someone, or you're photographing something, but you are visionary. You're not in a state of deep meditation. You're not coming out of a deep state of prayer or coming up from sleep in the hypnagogic state. You are fresh and alert and having these experiences. Use them for good. Use them to contact our Father in heaven, Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, Mary, the saints, the apostles. If you go out there, your intent is what steers you. So we get what we ask for. If you go into a power spot to slay a dragon is what you'll get. If you go in to commune with your Lord and Savior or God the Father, holiness, that is what you'll get. And that's how God wired the universe. It is also an aspect of the language of the birds. Your intent is key. Go in, saying the Ave Maria, praying the Lord's Prayer, and you just might have a mystical experience of a divine nature, if God wills it. So again, thanks for being here today. God bless you all, and I hope to see you next podcast. Thank you so much.